It's up for grabs now!
Magic ball from Bergkamp to Patrick Vieira!
Oh, would you believe it? Oh, right, what a way to get it! Fabulous solo goal by Thierry Henry. Champions.
Good evening. Welcome to the Arsenal Lounge, a positive Arsenal Lounge show today on the back of a great result. Before we go into all of that, let's say hello to our usual Monday crew, starting off with Mo. How you doing, Mr. Hyder?
Very good, man. Very good. Arsenal are, well, not top of the league. We were top of the league, but Arsenal are doing well. Just won a very important game, and it feels very different to this time last year, so I'm happy.
Good. And going over to our main man, Tom from Gooner Talk TV. I've been watching a lot of your stuff since the game on Friday. How are you feeling today, mate?
Yeah, buzzing, mate. I mean, of all the first kind of 5 games, this was the one I was fearing the most. So get 3 points out of this one is a big statement, considering our record there as well isn't good. And to get the win like we did is great. So yeah, buzzing weekend. I was actually away. I was on my stag do this weekend. So
that's why I was asking you how you was feeling.
Yeah. To be honest, it's not. I'm not hungover at all. It's more of like I'd ache. We did Zorb football, like as if you know what a big Zorb is.
Yeah,
like,
in the big bubble.
And you're like holding them. And basically, there was like 16 lads on this thing with me, and I was tasked with going 1v1 against all the other guys, one at a time, not all at once, one-on-one with each of them. So yeah, my shoulders are pretty wrecked, to be fair.
How knackering is that, Tom? Is it really tiring?
It is, but it's mainly because you feel like you're in a greenhouse for the entire time you're in it.
Was it hot?
Yeah, it was bake. Even though we were up in Newcastle, but it was still like sun was out and it was baking hot. So yeah, it was a tough one, but it was enjoyable. I had a great time. So
it's pretty brutal, that stuff, isn't it? You think you're protected, but the way you go flying and
proper
then
banging,
your legs are hanging out. So like, oh God, a knee injury, ankle injury, it's all very, very possible.
Yeah. Consider I've had ACL surgery as well. It was, I was all worried that was going to go. So yeah.
Have you done it, Mo? Have you done it yourself?
Yeah.
It sounds
really
like
fun.
a forfeit for this year's predictions, perhaps. We'll see. We'll see. We won't touch on the predictions just yet, but good news for me. So listen, a result at Selhurst Park. We were all worried about that game. Let's be honest. It was a tough game. First off, we started off out of the block really fast. The first 30 minutes or so. Maybe should have been a couple of goals up. Martinelli missing a sitter. I don't know how he did that. Jesus started on fire. But then, obviously, we did take the lead. Second half, different story. But I want to hear you guys and what you thought of it. So starting with Mo, obviously, I've heard a lot of what you were saying, but not on this show. It's a little bit different. So talk to me about your thoughts on the Palace game.
My thoughts have shifted a little bit since immediately after the game, and actually kind of less favourably so, because we did the business, and there's a lot of good out of that game. Obviously, way more good than bad. And I think the best thing about the game that I actually didn't focus on so much, because I was so happy about Saliba and Jesus and even Ben White, in my opinion, who I thought did brilliantly. Actually, the best thing about that game for me, looking back on it, was our resilience, because the drop-off from first 30 minutes to last 60 minutes, or we could say first half, second half, was actually worrying and a bit unacceptable. And it seemed to me like overall, Arteta's the winner for sure. And he obviously did come off the victor. But Patrick Vieira did very, very well to wrestle back control in that game. And not only just wrestle back control, but to make it stick. Arteta was unable to wrestle back after Vieira wrestled back, if you know what I mean. And actually, like, looking back at it, the way Palace dominated that game in the second half was a bit concerning. After the first 30 minutes, when you looked at all the stats, Arsenal was so far ahead. I would never have guessed that after 90 minutes, Palace would have had more possession, actually more passes attempted, completed, the better pass completion rate, all of that sort of stuff. So slightly worrying, but perhaps that's what you get, away from home at a ground like that. Maybe I need to contextualize that and say, just because we did so well in the first half for half an hour, perhaps that was away from the norm, and then the second half was more closer to the norm because Palace wouldn't expect to be dominated the way Arsenal did in the first 30 minutes. So still trying to understand fully whether was it actually a good day or was it actually a bad day. You think about the fact that They had some great chances, and Aaron Ramsdale, my God. Again, he's one that hasn't had enough praise because his 2 saves were chances with very high goal expectancy, and he pulled off phenomenal saves there. And then you think about our second goal, obviously very lucky. It could have been very, very different. And then you can imagine the mood of the fan base completely follows a result. So, I'm happy the way it's turned out. Could have been very different.
You know what, Mo? I'm actually glad you said that because I thought I'd be on my own on this one because I'm very happy with the result. I'm very happy with the first half performance. I do feel like, we should have taken our chances a little bit more in the first half. But I also felt that we dropped off. Maybe it was Xhaka getting that yellow in the second half, meaning that he started to be a bit more cautious and dropping off. But we did concede a lot more possession in that second half. And, I did feel that we didn't do enough to wrestle that game back. And it could have gone differently. So, I'm hoping the transfer market, we'll touch on that later on. But I'm hoping we're going to see a little bit more in the transfer market. But Tom, how did you see the game? Because I pretty much saw it straight off the bat. Like Mo, I was really happy. The defensive ruggedness and the determination and Saliba's performance in particular was great. But I did feel we did concede a lot of possession in that second half.
Yeah, look, I think the opening reaction is one of relief because winning your opening match of the Premier League season is so important. And we were given a really, hard hand, unfortunately, with that game given to us at Selhurst Park to open the Premier League season, the added pressure on that. But coming away with a win is huge. When you look at the game from an analytical standpoint, I think I agree with a lot of what Mo said there. There are some concerning things, absolutely, from that game. I think there's 2 ways of looking at it. You can look at the game in isolation and look at the negatives from it in that sense and what we need to improve on, which is, I don't like necessarily saying negatives. It's more areas for development in our game that I think is the best way to kind of appreciate it. But I think the other way of looking at it is going, look at how we played at Selhurst Park last season and compare that to the performance that we had on Friday night, and it's night and day across the entire game. Defensively, so much better, even when we were under the cosh and conceding more possession, etc. But also the opening half an hour compared to the opening half an hour of Selhurst Park last time, where Crystal Palace just blew us away. They had more desire. They wanted to win the game more, and they were well up for it, way more than we were. And yes, you can talk about the differences in the lineup, and that certainly played a part in Arsenal having a lot more quality in the form of Zinchenko and Jesus being there, having Ben White and Saliba playing on that right-hand side and completely nullifying really the threat of Wilfried Zaha throughout the game. But I thought at the same time, the desire was just night and day from that game. And to see the difference in the turnaround is certainly something that we can build upon. I think if ultimately you're coming out from that game and your viewpoint is one of there's nothing that's really changed, I'm still, in the same feeling as I was about Arsenal from the end of last season, I would encourage you to kind of watch it back and really look at the differences between this game and the Palace game in particular from last season. And I would say that I think that the changes that we've made in the market and the additions we've made to the team represent an identification of the errors that we made last year and moved out some of the performances in the form of Nuno Tavares, who's gone on loan, who had a really poor game at Palace last year. Of course, Lacazette isn't here anymore, and instead we've got Jesus. And of course, you've seen players like Odegaard and Saka and Martinelli have a year extra development, not from that Palace game, but just overall from a season. And I think that's key. So, yes, there's concerns. I think there's areas for development, but I think ultimately across the whole game, absolutely a massive step up in performance.
No, I agree in the sense that we would have lost that game last season, right? Definitely. And there was definitely improvements, and we could have been a couple of goals ahead in the first half. Before I go any further, I'm not very good at doing this. Shaheen does this better than I do. But look, a big hello to everyone in the chats. People asking where Shaheen is. If you haven't seen last week, Shaheen is actually away in Iran it's 3 weeks now. So it's another 3 weeks. You're going to have to pine for Shaheen until he returns. Until then, you've got me and you've got these guys here. Big hello to Matthew, Why Not, Trevelli, Jay Sayers, Kwa Tucker, Chris Carrick, Afshar, all the usual that are here. I can't go through them all. So look, we will be chatting to you sort of 10, 15 minutes before the end of the show where you can ask questions. So please remember that when the time comes. But going back to the game then, guys, I mean, there's a couple of things then. Firstly, Zinchenko. I think he had a great first half. I really do. I think he was excellent in the first half. But there was also a few things that I did recognize as well that, I'm not going to lie and say I watched him heavily last season when he was at City. It's it's just not what I do. I don't pay as much attention to my own as I do to my own team. Unlike maybe someone like Tom who does this seriously. But what I did notice about Zinchenko was
you're still serious, Lev. You're serious, man.
Oh, thanks, Tom. Thanks. But what I did realize, defensively, he showed some frailties in the second half. He was getting beaten a few times and getting caught sort of out of position. I'll start with maybe with you on this one, Tom, because you know a bit more about him than I do for sure. Is that what we're going to get with Zinchenko moving forward at left back? Is he somebody that's great going forward? I mean, look, the set piece, and a big shout out to is it it's Nicola Jova, isn't it? The set piece specialist.
Nicola Jova,
yeah. Brilliant set piece for the first goal. The way they split Zaha on the edge of the box, White and Zinchenko, and then obviously they were all talking about it was a bit of a gamble, but it was a calculated gamble. Zinchenko pulled to the far post, great delivery, great header across the goal, and Martinelli capitalized on it. But is this what we're going to be expecting from Zinchenko throughout the season?
The performance against Crystal Palace shouldn't be a fair representation of what we expect from a player that joined, a month ago after just 2 pre-season games and 1 Premier League game. It wouldn't be fair to say, yes, that's what you're going to see from Zinchenko for the rest of his Arsenal career. So that wouldn't be fair. What I would say is fair is that defensively, that is an area of his game where he is more vulnerable, where he can be exploited. And that happened at Manchester City. And I expect that to still happen at Arsenal. And that is what pretty much goes for the best offensive-minded fullbacks in the world. This isn't just a case of, the best fullback in the world is great at everything. You think of your Trent Alexander-Arnold, João Cancelos, etc. They still have, deficiencies defensively because they're so appreciated for what they do in the offensive end of the field. I think with Zinchenko, though, what he benefits from is that the Arsenal backline is set up in a way that allows him to get forwards. We've got Ben White. Usually we'd have Tomiyasu, who, again, is more of a disciplined-minded right back. So that when Zinchenko goes forwards, we've got those 3 defenders that are more disciplined and more sit back and can deal with any counterattacks that come forward. He also has Granit Xhaka on his side at the moment, who is far less mobile than, say, Thomas Partey, who would play more skewed to the right-hand side of a defensive line, even though he plays as kind of the sole number 6, because Xhaka is more defensive than Ødegaard. You find Partey operating more so on the right-hand side than the left-hand side. So I think that exposes Zinchenko a little bit more. I think you raised a really good point earlier on in the show, though, Lev, about saying that after Xhaka's yellow card, the pace kind of dipped. And I actually became aware of something that I wasn't aware of, that someone said to me that Xhaka's never been sent off for 2 yellow cards. He's only ever been sent off for 1 red card straight. So that, I think, tells you that when he gets the yellow, he is a lot more conservative. He may not jump in for the same amount of challenges. He maybe isn't as effective in games because he's minding himself. He isn't when he's not on a yellow, because he dives in for these silly fouls and stuff like that. But when he's on a yellow, that can, I think, may perhaps dip his performance slightly. And I think we can also say that Xhaka's been good, as a player, as a standout in his performances over the last year and a bit, has been the highlights of his Arsenal career, I think. So that maybe represented why Zinchenko's performance, especially in the second half, was more vulnerable. But I do expect teams in the future to pinpoint Zinchenko as the area of weakness, as I would if it was Kieran Tierney there, because in the Arsenal defence, our left-hand side defensively is probably our weakest area. So that is where teams are going to try and kind of, target. To be a critic of Patrick Vieira, I would have said if he was a little bit savvier to throw Zaha on the right-hand side. And I would have said that would have probably been able to get Crystal Palace much better, kind of, breaking behind the lines than maybe he would have offered on the left-hand side, because Ben White and Saliba dealt with him brilliantly.
Good point. And you raised there with regards to Ben White. To be fair to him, I think he handles Zaha extremely well. I was very worried about that, to be honest. But Mo, who stood out for you then from that game for Arsenal? Who stood out as the main guys? You're muted, Mo.
There you go. Sorry,
I love that I get to tell someone else that, because I've done it once and I've seen Tom do it on a show a couple of times recently as well. It's quite funny.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like, we've been in this post-pandemic world for so long, and I'm still doing this dumb stuff of talking and muting. When am I getting used to it?
When I do it, I always promise myself I'm going to remind myself, and I still do it. So you're not on your own there, mate. But go on.
Look, it's one of those ones where sometimes people try and think too hard about it and try and come up with an answer that's try and be the smartest guy in the room, come up with a hipster answer.
You're talking about me.
Not at all. Saliba. It was just Saliba, wasn't it? He was absolutely immense. He was brilliant. And the thing is, he started off on such a high. What I worry about, and someone gave an example I had a lot of time for. Tony Adams was Arsenal captain at 21, and he got the nickname Donkey because he went through some tough patches, right?
Yeah.
And so I always say, like I said this about Bukayo Saka, when he came into the team and just absolutely smashed it, that he will go through a bad patch, and it's up to us as supporters of this club or as fans of this club what we want to do when that happens. Are we just going to hold him to that high standard that he's hit above all of our expectations, or are we actually going to say to him, we've been around long enough as fans, we're long in the tooth here, we know that it's not going to just be consistently great, there will be a period where he dips a little bit and we have to support him through that, or are we going to be fanatics about it and just go mental when it's good, mental when it's bad? Saliba will not always play to that level. Okay, it's like there's a theory in life, isn't there? Like, in fact, Amazon as an organization, they have this theory, that a first day theory, where the first time you're doing something, the first time you're doing your job, for example, the first thing you'll ever do in life, you do that with like a level of diligence and concentration that's hard to replicate. That's just part of being human. This was Saliba's long-awaited debut in the Premier League. Can you imagine how much he would have wanted to be perfect in this game, to almost like send a message that I'm ready and I've been ready and that sort of thing? So naturally, humans aren't going to be perfectly consistent. We're not robots. And as a young player, as a central defender, there's not many other 20-year-old, or however old he is, 21, 22-year-old central defenders in the Premier League playing to that level. So we have to be prepared for the drop-off when it comes. And then I want to see the fan base support him, rally around him, and be decent supporters. So I'm only saying that as a word of caution, because he's set the bar very, very high, very, very early. And in a way, he might become a victim of his own success.
Well, I'm hoping he carries that on. I mean, to be fair to him, the way he handled himself after as well with the journalists, with the media, he seems like he's grown a lot these last couple of years. I mean, he has had a hard time these last couple of years. He lost his mum when he first come over. He didn't get in the side. He got sent out twice. He's had some tough times already, and he's come out of it, I think, a stronger guy. Look, he's come out of it getting his team into Champions League, being in the team of the year in League 1 and young player of the year as well. So I just don't know. I just think we're going to see a lot more from this kid. I've got a lot of hope for him. And I've got to say as well, I've got to give a shout out to Ben White. I'm not, I'm one of his harshest critics at times, but I think playing out on the right-hand side against someone like Zaha, who could cause you a torrid time, I think he did exactly the right thing. Didn't give him much space, didn't give him enough space to run at him too much. So I'd have to, praise him for that too. I think the defense in general and Ramsdale saved us when it mattered. And Jesus, obviously, first half. I don't think we saw the best of Jesus in that Palace game, to be honest. I think there's more to come from him. But even if that's him at his sort of 7 or 8 average, that's good enough for me. He's still a very, very good player. On another note, being very, very picky, I do think, you guys can come at me for saying this, I do think Saka needs to be more decisive in the final third. I really do.
Said that for a long time, I think.
Yeah. And Odegaard as well. He tried to overplay it when he had a chance to shoot.
Yeah.
So those little areas there, if I'm going to be nitpicky. But look, let's have some player ratings while we're at it then. We'll start with Mo and we'll start with Ramsdale. What would you give him for that game?
Well, actually, it's a good question because
distribution was a bit dodgy in the first half.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he basically did what a goalkeeper needs to do, and that is keep that clean sheet, make those big saves. But I think he gave Palace a lot of impetus in the game.
He did.
And created a few of the jitters. They picked up on that in the commentary as well, and it was very unnecessary. So that, I'd say, takes him down from a 9 to an 8. But overall, I think, he was a massive, massive part in us leaving Selhurst Park with 3 points.
And let us know in the chat as well. So 8 for Ramsdale. Let's go with Ben White. What would you give him, Tom?
Probably an 8 as well. As playing out of position, at right back, and then having to keep out Wilfried Zaha. I think contextually an 8 is probably a fair representation. I think he made the most tackles of any player as well successfully on the pitch. So yeah, I'd give him an 8 for the performance.
Okay, I'll go Gabriel, so I can give Mo the nice one with Saliba. Gabriel there was a little moments with Gabriel distribution wise, but all in all, again, we've kept them out. We haven't conceded. Saliba did save him once or twice, so I'll probably give him a 7.5. Being a bit harsh, but 7.5. Mo, Saliba
9. Enough said. We've spoken about him already. He gets a 9, man of the match.
9, excellent. And then on the left-hand side, we had obviously Zinchenko with his debut. What would you give him for his debut, Tom?
Yeah, probably a 7. I think it was a good performance, but as you said, and we talked about defensively, looked a little bit suspect at moments. I expect that to improve. But yeah, inverted fullback, a 7, and a great assist, of course, and a clean sheet at the end of it too. But contextually, again, yeah, I think a 7 is probably fair.
Okay, who should I go with next? Should I go Odegaard, or should I go Partey or Xhaka? Oh, I'll go Xhaka because that's a tough one for me. So I'll have to say I'll give Xhaka a 7. I can't really fault him. Obviously, he did drop off a little bit. That dive, I think he was a bit harsh being booked for that personally, but he did drop off a little bit too much in that second half. So I'll go 7.
What do you mean harsh being booked for that dive? If that was Harry Kane in the North London derby,
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't.
Would you ever come on this podcast and say, "Oh, that was a bit harsh from Harry Kane"?
Hold on. Of all the things for Xhaka to get booked for, diving, like not even in the box, like you know how slow his legs are anyway. I don't think he could have got himself out of the way. He just
that is awful. That was a yellow card all day. There was no need. Can't say he was unlucky. Come on.
Yeah, but it was the only thing he did. All right, hold on. Palace dived. The guy who was it that dived for Palace? I can't remember his name now. He dived and he didn't get anything. So Eze, that's it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that just because the referee doesn't get one wrong, you should get them all wrong. Try and get as many right as possible. He was absolutely right to book Xhaka.
My God.
That was awful.
Yeah, we'll touch on that penalty decision in a minute earlier on in the Brighton game later on as well. Okay, so Mo, you get what I'm giving you. Thomas Partey.
He was good. He was not sort of someone who will grab the headlines, but he was very tidy. He barely put a foot wrong, and I just thought he was very, very solid. So I give him an 8.
8, yeah. Right. So who else we got? Odegaard, Tom.
Yeah, I think it frustrates me again because this season from Odegaard, I really want to see him be more direct. And in that moment where he overplayed it, I was like, that was the moment where you could pick up your Shaheens and give them a shake and say, look, he's improving. But unfortunately, he didn't. And you've got to be fair. So I think, a 7, 7.5 around that kind of figure. 7.25 we'll go for. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Not many people get to pick up Shaheen. I'd like to see that. Okay. So I'll go on to Saka. I'll take Saka. I will give Saka a 7. I think he needs to be more decisive in the final third. He has a couple of chances he could have done better with. So I'll give him a 7. He did cause problems.
Just for me to be clear here, we're giving Saka a lower rating than Odegaard in that game.
What, by a point?
It's two different people. I would have given Saka a 7.5 and Odegaard a 7. But
people in the chat, who should get a high rating, Saka or Odegaard in that game?
Are they both lack decisiveness in that final third. Both of them did.
Saka's one of the reasons why we won the game ultimately, though. That.
All right. Well, next time I'll ask you, Tom. Yeah. Jesus Christ. Right.
Hey, I'm not the one who started this. It was all Mo.
No, come on.
Well, I don't want to sit here and play all nice all the time. Like when I
don't deal with 0.5s. What is this? I'm not a dealer. Anyway, so we'll give Martinelli to you, Mo.
A bit of a mixed bag, Martinelli, because second half, non-existent. Really was non-existent for me in the second half. And he missed a really good chance. Even the goal that he scored he didn't bury it with conviction. Had the keeper saved it, we'd all be saying, you gave him a save to make. Overall, I think there's a lot more to come from him. So I'd give him a 7.
Oh, hold on. So he was worse than Saka.
No.
Hold on. You said he was non-existent second half.
But I wouldn't have given Saka a 7. And I wouldn't have given Ødegaard a 7.25.
So what would you have given Saka out of curiosity?
7.5, because I feel like he never disappeared. He always posed a threat. I get the criticisms of his game, even though I don't agree with them as much. But whilst Martinelli disappeared out the game, I felt like Saka often led the counter-attack and often caused the issue, and then ultimately forced the second goal. So I think
Martinelli
Saka
scored.
Huh?
Martinelli scored.
No, I appreciate that, but Saka
I love how you said that with such conviction. Martinelli scored.
That's surely worth 0.5.
Saka wasn't given a chance, a gilt-edged chance of that nature, and Martinelli also missed an absolute sitter. So I try not to get too distracted by the goals. So, for example, Ødegaard had that one moment where he should have pulled the trigger, didn't. That doesn't, for me, define his entire game. So the Martinelli goal or the missed chance doesn't determine the entire game. Actually, the bulk of the game was spent with him not having enough influence in that second half when we needed someone to get hold of the ball and kind of say, get the team up the pitch. And he didn't do that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree in that aspect. I mean, a lot of that also depends on their midfield conceding the possession, then those wide players getting less of the ball. So it is a tough one, but I agree with you on that. So you get Jesus, Tom, in his debut for Arsenal in the Premier League away at Selhurst Park.
Yeah, look, I think as you said earlier, there's a lot more to come from him. So I think, if we're going to give Saka a 7.5, I think we're going to give him an 8 in terms of his influence on the game. It's tough. It's really tough because you start giving these ratings, like 7 to Saka or 7.5 to Saka, and you're thinking, well, I think Jesus was more important to the way that we were offensively, especially in the first half, and I think then you have to rate him slightly higher. So then if you're giving Saka a 7.5, then an 8 is probably fair for Jesus. But then I'm thinking for a player that didn't score and probably trailed off in the second half, is an 8 really reflective of that performance? It's tough. So, yeah, I'm going to say an 8, considering how we've rated the other players for Jesus.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to go into the substitutes too much, I don't think. But, I mean, look.
On that, did you find it weird that he waited so long to make a
Yes, I did. I did, because you've got 5 subs now, right? And we were conceding a lot of possession in midfield, and I was screaming at the television. I was sort of like, give us some fresh legs. Give us something in midfield where we can maybe, start winning the ball back a little bit. But yeah, I did. I was surprised. Mo, did you feel the same about that? Subs?
Yeah, I do think that I was kind of watching it thinking, like, when are you going to do something here? Because it was very clear that we needed a change in the game with the way the control was wrestled away from us. And I do think Arsene Wenger. I didn't think Arteta waited too long. But the reason I was going to say that is it reminded me of the Arsene Wenger days. You're sort of thinking, like, come on. But yeah, he waited too long.
Arsene Teta. That's what we'll start calling him from now on. Listen, very quickly one then. Based on what we know about Zinchenko so far, it is very early days. But I'd like to hear your opinions on this. A fit Tierney, who we know is probably defensively stronger than Zinchenko, and a fit Zinchenko, who would you start in that left back position?
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
I like that it's tough. That's great. It's great that it's really good to have this problem. I think it might depend on the opponent. I think against the top 6 sides, I'm starting Zinchenko. I think that even though they both have their defensive deficiencies, I think Zinchenko is more important for having that kind of patient build-up and intricate play than Tierney is. Tierney's, I think, very good when we play against maybe the lower half of the teams, the relegation fodders and teams like that, where you can really get forward. He can start creating chaos with those crosses that he puts into the box. But I think for controlled possession, I'd rather have Zinchenko in the team.
Mo, do you feel the same?
No,
I don't.
Maybe Tom's looking at it on a player-to-player basis. I'm looking at it as, what has Tierney done at Arsenal and how have I rated him at Arsenal? When Tierney's fit and he plays, I think he's been good for Arsenal. And at one point, he was our primary attacking outlet. That's how much we relied on him. So I feel like, has he done anything to deserve being displaced in the team? Probably not. But I can see Tom's point of view from like a suitability of the player for the occasion sort of thing. And then the only other thing why I would be okay with sometimes the option being not the one that I've chosen in Tierney, but Zinchenko playing, is to manage Tierney's fitness. Because if we're kind of saying that, look, we're not, a player might be in the green zone, then amber zone and red zone. A lot of players can play in that amber zone of fitness and health. Tierney maybe can't. So when he's in that amber zone, just don't risk it at all. Just stick Zinchenko in there. So I'm not going to kick up a fuss this season when one of them gets picked over the other, because provided it helps Tierney always be available and fit, and that means if Zinchenko picks up an injury, we've got Tierney there rather than Tierney getting injured, then Zinchenko playing and then left with no one. I just want to make sure in that left back role, it's only ever one of those two people.
I mean, it could be a case that him being injured more recently than not, we maybe forgotten about him a little bit and what he brings to the team, and he does bring a lot attacking wise as well. It was a lot of the stuff that he was the one putting in some crazy crosses that someone like Jesus, who I think will benefit from long term, and it could be the onus he needs. I think Tierney will step up to the challenge. I think he's defensively a little bit more sound than Zinchenko, but it is, as Tom said, it's a great problem to have, one we didn't have last season. So moving on to that, then this is where I wanted to sort of get onto the transfers before we start looking at the game coming up, etc., because we're starting to develop strength in depth. We can see that. I'm starting to feel a lot more comfortable. If Tierney's injured, Zinchenko comes in, much more comfortable with that. Tomiyasu on the right, we've now got the ability to play White if Tomiyasu's out, for example, and vice versa. So we've got some strength in depth there. If one of the centre backs is injured, then we've got a good alternative for any of those three there. But then I'm looking at midfield still, and I'm looking at sort of that front line. I still have my reservations with regards to Nketiah sort of filling someone like Jesus' boots. It's not the equivalent of Zinchenko, Tierney, or White, Tomiyasu for me. I think there's a drop in level, and I also feel that may be the case in midfield. So we've been hearing some mutterings in regards to the Tielemans story, which hasn't gone away. Torreira has obviously now gone to Galatasaray, I believe. It's all pretty much done and dusted. We've offloaded Leno. That's a different matter. But I'm looking at midfield now, and I'm looking at there's a continued link to a winger that could potentially play up front. It seems to be what we're hearing. So, Tom, I mean, you've got your finger on the pulse generally. Tielemans, it sounds like another guy has to go out, maybe potentially Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I think you mentioned in your show this morning. Yeah. What are we looking at? What are we hearing? Is that likely to happen? I got this distinct feeling that Tielemans is going to happen.
I mean, I agree with you. That's kind of the feeling I get. I think ultimately what's really important when we start off talking about transfers is that obviously we know that there are people out there, the Ornsteins, your Fabrizios, etc., that are very, very well connected. Probably the two most connected transfer guys, I would be, happy to say that in terms of those two. They have both stated that they are struggling to get information about what Arsenal are doing in this window. I mean, I reported at the start of the window for FL about the fact that Arsenal have implemented strategies, to keep stuff under wraps, to be secretive. And that's how the Fabio Vieira deal was kept so quiet. And I think the fact that both Ornstein and Fabrizio are very, very... And I think, Ornstein this window has been, for me, an absolute king for information. He's broken so many massive stories this window have turned out to be true. That I think the fact that he is struggling to know what Arsenal are doing is in an indication that we probably won't know too much realism around what Arsenal's plans are until, that it gets close to happening. But kind of from my feeling around Tielemans, I agree with you that it's one that I think that can happen. I don't think that Xhaka necessarily has to leave for that deal to happen. I think Maitland-Niles potentially does, but I still think as though he's a player that Arsenal, before the end of this window, have a great chance of getting and want to get. There's a feeling that they've been looking at other potential targets, hence why it's dragged on as long as it has. I think they know they can get him, and because of that comfortability with the transfer, if they could get a better player, they might try and do that, because Arsenal have been very stringent about the players they're looking to sign, and they want to be 100% sure that they're getting the best player they can in a window for the position that they want to get. Hence why they were happy to wait for Gabriel Jesus, bat off other targets that they were potentially looking at to try and get him. But yeah, Tielemans, specifically on him, from your question, I'm optimistic that, that's one that we would get done.
I mean, it did sound like from the chat from Arteta on Sky Sports the other day that there are plans in place. They do look like they're going to go for one or two more players coming in. Is that still the case? Then a winger? Why? It does strike me that we're so insistent on the winger situation. We discussed this other day last week, and Mo sort of agreed. Out of the players that I would like coming in, the winger for me is not as pressing as the central midfield area. But yet again, we're still linked with the likes of Yeremy Pino from Villarreal, Moussa Diaby from Bayer Leverkusen, and Cody Gakpo from PSV, amongst others. I mean, what are you hearing in regards to that?
Diaby is a non-starter for me. I don't think that there's any chance of that happening, to be honest. Not only has he said that he wants to stay, but the price tag that Bayer Leverkusen would want is just not, for me, reflective of the player that you're going to get in Diaby. And I think that would be a massive risk to play upwards of 60 million quid. For
lot
him.
of money, yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player, but if you're going to spend 60 million pounds on him, who doesn't, for me, Martinelli and Saka aren't dropped right now for him, personally. That's a lot of money. Yeremy Pino is a really interesting one, and I like it. I've done a lot of kind of digging on him today and research on him. He's a really interesting player. He strikes me as the perfect kind of Arteta-style wide player, tracks back, gets involved, really high pressures, good defensive work rate. Direct, likes to get in the box like Saka does, is creative. His XG is actually better than that of Diaby's, last season, and he fell in line with it, whereas Diaby really overachieved his XG, which kind of indicates that he would drop down naturally to a lower goal and assist rate, specifically goal rate next season, whereas, Yeremy Pino's on the up and still only 20 years of age, and I think that fits kind of a profile of wide player when you've got the likes of Saka there, that it makes it more. It seems because we couldn't get Rafinha that the next level down, there isn't a load of players that can really get as competitive as Rafinha. I don't think he was kind of the perfect option for Arsenal to sign in that role, but without getting him, the alternatives to him just can't really match what we were looking for in that type of wide player. But Pino is very interesting indeed, and very, very highly rated in Spain. He turned down some massive moves when he was younger to the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona because he wanted to stay at Villarreal and develop more and play more. And it shows kind of his ambition and drive to make it. So if he does move to Arsenal, it's because he feels that he can compete and get into that Arsenal team and play regularly. So he's one to keep an eye on. Gakpo will just continue to be linked forever. He's a Draxler-esque type player, I think, that's going to get linked continuously. And even if we were to sign Pino, because Gakpo plays on the left more so than the right, I think those links would still persist. But the big question with the winger is what happens to Nicola Pepe? He's still here. There's no links with him moving out because of that wage. Would we sign someone without him moving on? I find it odd that if we did that, but never say never, I guess.
Maybe it could be used in a swap, maybe
potentially,
or some sort, or a make weight. Great, yeah, great. Mo, how do you feel about it? Do you still want a couple of signings in before the window shuts? And if so, what's the pressing areas for you?
Centre mid, with the wingers, we look at Palace, right? We've got that front three that I think we'd all be happy with if they all started the next game. Jesus, Saka, Martinelli. Then we've got Vieira, Smith Rowe, Pepe, Reece Nelson, Marquinhos. And yeah, fair enough. Reece Nelson, Marquinhos, they may not be up to the level, but still Vieira, Smith Rowe, and Pepe. I just don't see it as a pressing need. But Smith Rowe can come in and play on either side, as far as I'm concerned. And Pepe, look, he might not have absolutely smashed it, but he does have this sneaky little habit to get in and amongst the goals and assists. Throughout all of his time at Arsenal, he's just managed to bag a few. Now, in the next game, if we chuck either one of those two on as a sub, I'm happy. I'm not looking at that thinking, oh, the level's completely dropped off here. And then also, Fabio Vieira is a complete unknown entity. So I just don't feel like it's the wisest use of our resources. If given these rumours are going on, to me, given what I've just said and the players I've just mentioned, it would indicate that potentially there's something we don't know about an outgoing. And if that does then deliver in terms of an outgoing, then it makes sense to get one in. Other than that, Granit Xhaka has been much better. Like Tom said, I agree with that. Recently, the last 12 months or whatever, probably been the highlight of his Arsenal career. But do I really think that there's other members of, other fans of the top six who look at Arsenal play and think, oh, I'd love to have Granit Xhaka in our team? I don't think that happens. And I think that's a very good barometer at times of understanding like where a player sits from the external point of view. We can get a bit too caught up in seeing that player's improvement at Arsenal, because obviously Xhaka, from where he was to where he is now, we feel like it's a bit of a redemption story. But you have to look at it with cold, hard facts. I look at Kevin De Bruyne like any other fan does and thinks, wow, love to have him in my team, right? And obviously he's an exceptional case. But I don't think, whilst we all think that of De Bruyne, I don't think anyone thinks that of Xhaka. Thomas Partey, on the other hand, I think a lot of people would look at him and think, yeah, he's a really good player. Fabinho at Liverpool, loads of fans would look at him and think, yeah, what a great player. Rodri, again, most would take him than not. So here's my point here about Granit Xhaka, that I still think that you can improve on him. And I don't know at this stage with people whether that's a controversial thing to say, whether people feel like you're scapegoating him or you just can't get over the past with him. It's not about that. I've got no dislike for the guy as a human being, sort of thing. It's not a personal thing. It's not an agenda-driven thing. I just think we can do better.
Fair enough. I mean, and also what we should be touching on from the transfer window perspective is our loanees, the guys that have gone out. I've always maintained that I think there's a player in Nuno Tavares. I really do. I just think, and watching All or Nothing, which we will go on to, I will ask your opinions on that as well. That's been quite interesting. But, you can see the lad wants to do well. And I think he's a talent. I'm just not sure, he was being played. He's not an out-and-out left back, should we say. He's a bit different. He could be a winger almost, the way he plays. But, I mean, he scored in his debut. Great goal outside the box. I believe he got an 8 out of 10. Tom was saying in his show today as well this morning. And also Balogun out on loan. Is it Rons, as you were saying, Tom?
Rons, yeah.
Rons, yeah, at Rons.
Yeah. I've been picked up on that pronunciation so much, I actually get a Frenchman to explain it, how to say it. So, yeah.
So you actually did some research into the pronunciation.
Yeah. The amount of people that pick you up on pronunciations is mad.
Okay. All right. So it's Rons, and he scored as well. Look, our guys that are going out at the moment, maybe it's showing the quality of youngsters we have coming through, or the players that we're buying. They're good guys. They're just, look what going on loan did for Saliba. Maybe going on loan for these guys will be the making of them. And I, for one, would like to look at Tavares again when he comes back, to be honest. But we'll see how we go. The guys putting questions in the chat. Last 15 minutes or so, put your questions in and we'll look at them for sure. So moving on, we've got our next game at home. First game of the season at home against Leicester, who conceded a 2-goal lead. 2-2 it ended up against Brentford. I'm starting to feel the Leicester of old, that really tough Leicester team that was there is not that same team. The old sort of Vardy's getting on a bit. Schmeichel's now gone out to his Nice, isn't it? He's gone to. So that's starting to change. I feel pretty confident looking forward to this game this weekend. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. Starting with Mo, how are you feeling about the game against Leicester this coming weekend at home? Are you going to it, by the way?
Yes, I will be there. And, with Leicester, it's a bit of a shame, actually, because they were, that team that basically, in a really great way, stuck their fingers up at the money equals success model that we see in football. And they were the sort of team that no one begrudged them doing well when they won the league. No matter who you were, I think it was a case of like, would like it to be my own club, but I'm happy for Leicester. When they won the FA Cup, again, happy for Leicester. And now, I don't know what's gone on. I don't know why they've dropped off and now they've become this sort of selling club where they don't seem to be showing a lot of ambition. But it's a bit of a shame to see. And actually, last year, Neville and Carragher did their pre-season predictions, right? Of overachievers, top 4, underachievers, all that sort of stuff. So I did my own. And actually, I want to get yours. And for the underachievers, I've put Leicester. I feel as though, given what their recent history has been, they're a shadow of themselves. And honestly, I'm expecting quite it's famous last words, but I'm expecting a fairly okay victory, against them. I don't expect them to come and put up a real fight and a real challenge. There's other teams I fear a lot more.
Okay, fair enough. And should I be pressing? I'll hold off for the prediction. Should I give you? No, let me ask you your prediction now, because I'm 1 for 1 in my predictions. Me and Mo both got. Does that give us 3 points, Mo?
Yeah, 3 points. So that means we have to go first because we're top of the table.
Top of the table. Yeah, I don't know how that feels. I'm losing my head. I'm losing my head.
It's getting giddy.
I'm getting giddy up there, getting a nosebleed.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think it will be 2 or 3. I'm going to say 2-0 again to Arsenal.
Ooh, okay,
Nice.
all right, okay. I think I'm going to go for the same. I'm going to go 2-0 Arsenal as
You can't
well.
just keep on copying me. If this is your tactic,
I'm not. It's not my tactic.
It's superior knowledge.
Oh
it's just
my
a joke. You've got
God.
to stand on your own 2 feet there.
Superior knowledge.
Wow.
Even if he does say so modestly himself. I don't know. It's gambling and guessing on score lines hardly gives superior knowledge. That sort of. I don't know if that's true, but anyway, I'm going for 2-0. I have a right to go for 2-0. If I want to go for 2-0, I can do. So I'm going to go for 2-0. Tom, how do you see it going? And I'd like a prediction at the end as well. You're not allowed to get 2-0. Apparently, only 2 people can have the same result.
Apparently. Okay. I'll go for 3-0 and stick with my prediction from last week.
Yes, good one.
I agree with you. I think Leicester, they're not the team that they are. Defensively, there are questions. They conceded 2, could have conceded 3, if it wasn't for an offside late against Brentford, and were arguably. I know I've only seen the highlights, but from what I've seen, weren't in the game in the second half really. So I think that there are opportunities for Arsenal at home with a crowd that is going to be so up for that game. Like first home game of the season, they are Arsenal's crowd. The Emirates this season is going to be hopefully a very, very positive and optimistic and loud place, and not a very nice place for opposition sides to visit. I think Gabriel Jesus hopefully will get his first competitive goal in this fixture. And potentially we could see Fabio Vieira as well come on for the first time off the bench, and I'll be intrigued to see what he can do.
Yeah.
So 3-0 I'm going to go for, and fairly comfortable.
Okay, we'll get Shaheen's prediction via his VPN in Iran when he is allowed to get onto the internet.
Hold on, I've got it. Yes.
Yeah, what is it? What is it?
It's 2-0 Leicester. Just got that through.
Yeah. Well, if he doesn't come up with a prediction, well, he done 2-1 last week, so he's not got anything. So he's bottom of the table at the moment. And long may that continue. So moving straight on to some questions. We've got about 10 minutes to go. Wayne, thank you so much for your support. You're always here. Yeah, you're late. Sorry, we done it early. We will be hopefully back at 8 p.m. next week, guys. Is that right? I think we'll keep an eye out, keep your notifications on. But Wayne is asking, damn, I'm late. Is it just me, or is the media not giving Arsenal any credit for winning by 2 goals in a place where winning is difficult to do? And I saw some crazy, you could ask that to Tom in a second, and Mo, crazy Sun headline as well, suggesting that Arsenal fans now believe Arteta is going to make the next Invincibles. I don't know where they got that headline from. Did you see that? It is insane. But anyway,
tweet.
yeah, it was absolutely, it was a Sun headline. But do you feel the media haven't given us enough credit for that result, Tom? Mo?
Go on, Tom.
No, go on, Mo.
It's something
no, go on, Tom.
It's actually something I mentioned in my, I can't remember if it was my match review or my 5 at 5. I think it might be my 5 at 5, where I basically said the result was the complete opposite to this time last year. London derby away from home. We lost 2-0, got battered. Here we won 2-0, So it was a complete opposite. But has the media reaction been the complete opposite? Absolutely not. Has Gary Neville run a segment on how well Ben White did against Zaha in a position out of his comfort zone?
Or how bad Lisandro Martinez was either.
I was terrible.
And I just think to myself, they haven't. If they did, I'd say, well, fair enough. They slated us last year, maybe deservedly so, but I don't think we've got what we deserve this year. But you know what? That's not always a bad thing. And the one thing that I would say is that if I've tried to explain this to people in the past, right? When people complain about when Tottenham don't win trophies, they get no stick. When Arsenal don't win trophies, it's crisis. They can bang on about it. When was the last time Arsenal won a trophy? All that sort of stuff. Now, what that actually tells you, if you really unpick it, is the standards and the levels of a club and what's expected of them. So when Arsenal go away to Brentford, lose 2-0 and get embarrassed, that is newsworthy. because that is not fitting of Arsenal Football Club. That is actually a news story. When Arsenal go to Palace and we win 2-0, we might think, oh, we deserve loads of credit. Actually, the media know the standards of the Arsenal. And that's actually not worthy of us singing and dancing about. We should actually take that as a bit of a compliment that we're not getting back page headlines. Brighton will, because they've gone to Man United, because that's not what the media expect of Brighton. But Arsenal are a top level club. And when you feel a bit hard done by in terms of the response to certain things, it's because of our incredible history and our standing in the English football pyramid. So just bear that in mind, that we're not going to get all the plaudits where we get loads of criticism, but that's because we're flipping gargantuan. And actually, it's about time we got back to where we need to be. And we'll get the plaudits when we go and not beat Palace 2-0, when we go and beat Bayern Munich 2-0, or when we go and win proper trophies. That's when we'll go and get the plaudits that we're seeking.
There you go. Standards are high. Rancid Pumpkin asks, in which case would you play Zinchenko over Xhaka? I'll ask you this, Tom.
I would play him over Xhaka in games against probably those further down the table. That's probably when I would do it and try it. Also, if Tierney is on a real storm in form, that's really where only Zinchenko is going to get in. But again, we go back to that saying of it's a nice problem to have, someone who can play in midfield, someone who could, if Xhaka gets injured, and he has had injuries and of course suspensions in the past, I think Zinchenko is a natural fit for that left centre midfield position because he occupies it strangely when he plays left back as well. So I think it is a natural fit. So that's when I think you'd see him come into the midfield.
Thank you for that, Tom. Kelvin Overy asks, is Tielemans better than Xhaka? I'll ask you this, Mo.
In my opinion, short answer, yeah.
Okay, very good. Tom, do you want to give me a quick answer to that? Yes or no?
They're different kind of players, but I think I'd start Tielemans more than Xhaka. So I'll lean towards that, yeah.
Fair enough. Let's see what else we've got here. Question from Pramod N to Mo. How hilarious it would be if Arsenal signed Frankie de Jong, and how much would you enjoy it, Mo?
Well, you can tell by the smile on my face, even the question. I've enjoyed the question. Never mind actually happening.
If he looked at last week's before that game against Brighton, I don't think he ever wants to go there, does he?
Well, that's exactly what's happened, doesn't it? Like, they've been pursuing him. They've had a 65 million transfer fee agreed for months on end. He hasn't sort of said anything. I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if he's thinking, let me see who else they sign. Let me see what level of ambition there is. Oh, they're linked with Arnautovic. They're just like the Brighton.
What is going on?
I don't really fancy it. But, it's immediate. Juan Laporta, Barcelona president, has come out and said he now wants to stay and we want to keep him. And that's literally after the Brighton game. I just find it hilarious. Chelsea and United, the way they're navigating this transfer window is just like...
Chelsea's is brilliant.
Yeah,
I'm loving Chelsea. It's great.
It's lovely to see, man.
Link to this player, gone elsewhere. Link to that player, gone elsewhere. It's great. I'm enjoying every second of it.
No, you know what? I thought we might struggle to pull some players, but it seems like players are buying into our project. Matthew D'Souza asked, what is the latest regards to Bellerin and Pepe? Are their contracts about to be written off? I've heard this about Bellerin. I don't know about Pepe. Tom?
Bellerin, it does seem that's the case. There's reports that his agent's flying into London at the moment to have that situation. It sucks, in my view, that we can't get any money for him. But when you've got a situation where a player only wants to go to one place and is refusing to go anywhere else, it puts us in a very difficult situation. And, maybe saving 5 million quid's worth of wages next season is the better outcome. In terms of Pepe, that was the other one, wasn't it? I think I said earlier on, there's nothing on that one. No update at all, I'm afraid. He's still very much an Arsenal player, and it still seems very much like he will be next season at the moment. But fingers crossed that changes.
Thank you for that, Tom. This isn't a question, but I'll very quickly put it up. GS has asked, please feature my comment. This is for Mr. Mohammed. Bravo on the composure you displayed dealing with the employee from the stadium, he says, and bid him a nice, happy, whatever, when you see him on the gate, when you see him this weekend, should I say.
Yeah.
Thibaut Pesque, how bad are United? He asks.
Thibaut, can I just clarify now? Because now, when you say United, I don't know whether you're talking about West Ham, Newcastle, Manchester.
Oh my God!
You need to clarify, mate, because the eminent United in the league now is West Ham, isn't it? So is this about West Ham?
Yeah. Well, West Ham are pretty decent. Leeds United, all right.
Yeah,
Man
Leeds
United
as well,
are
yeah.
awful.
Don't know who you're talking about anymore.
Oh God,
They're that
yeah.
irrelevant.
United, they're anything but United at the moment. I was watching actually Goldbridge's show, and it was hilarious when they lose.
So funny.
It is. All right, if you haven't watched it, if you want to have a laugh, go and watch Goldbridge's show. It is.
Hey up! Oh, 2-0 up, bollocks!
Yeah. What a shit show! What a shit show!
So good.
Very quickly, super chat from Mo. Guys, I think people are overrated Zinchenko's debut. He is terrible at defending. Ooh, well, it's a bit harsh.
I don't think anyone really was singing about Zinchenko's debut that much. I think people just thought it was fine.
He had a chant created. So
that chant is gold. It's amazing. Zinchenko.
It's gold, is
brilliant.
it?
Yeah.
Did you mean to say that?
Yeah. Of course I did, mate. I'm seamless as a presenter right now. Things go better when Sheen's not here. All right. So look, there's a few more questions. I can't go through them all, guys. But thanks. I just wanted to spend this last 5 minutes hearing your thoughts on the All or Nothing show, because I've not really had a chance to speak to you about it, and I've caught up with it. I know Mo was doing a super exclusive midnight mass of a sort of a reveal of the show that got put back by another hour for 1 o'clock. I don't know if you actually made that. Did you do that live, Mo?
We did, and then we got copyright restricted.
I was wondering.
I told you. I
saw advice.
So you stayed up till 1 in the morning and you couldn't even use the show.
Yeah, I saw advice as well. Had a disclaimer and made sure that we were in line with that fair use policy. But no, man, they jumped on that very, very quickly. So yeah, unfortunately,
that's why I've not done a breakdown of it, because they are being very.
Yeah.
But what's your thoughts on it, having watched it? What has it given you? What insight has it given you? And has anything changed your perspective?
It just reminds you, doesn't it, that they're so much more human than you realize day to day. And that's me saying it, where I've never once dished out actual abuse in all my years, and privately, publicly. So it's not. I don't feel like I'm really the big beneficiary of remembering that they are actually human beings. But I hope that some of the people that are quite abusive to them do remember that and take that away.
They won't care. They won't care.
No, Tom, what did you get out of it? I mean, what stood out for you from it?
Yeah, look, I agree with Mo, and I have that same hope, but I have the expectation that they won't care. Look, if you're an abuser of a footballer or a manager or whoever, you don't care. I'm sorry, but it's really difficult to reason with the trolls that exist in the world. I went to London Colney the other week and sat in the room with Aaron Ramsdale to discuss the episodes from 1 to 3, and it was very clear from him that his kind of reaction to the abuse he got before he signed, when everyone was tweeting him saying don't sign for Arsenal, and you see it in the documentary as well, like the tweets that come out saying don't sign, he was getting death threat. He said in the room, he was like, because when we went up to Colney with all the other journalists to speak to them, the players hadn't seen it yet. They were seeing it the following week, and of course at the premiere they were going to see it as well. So Ramsdale didn't think he got death threats, but it's interesting because one of the tweets that comes up is a death threat that goes towards him. So it does kind of show the level of it's not trolls, because it's of a level that goes beyond just trolling, the abuse these players get. But beyond that social side of things, I think there was some interesting stuff. The "you never walk alone" attempts from Arteta.
Yeah, that was a bit.
Felt. And when Ramsdale was actually asked, he just jokes that, I don't think the speakers will be coming out again, because it just didn't work. You might say that we went to Anfield and then kept a 0-0, which not many other teams have kept a clean sheet at Anfield. I think we're the first team to do it in a ridiculous amount of time, but. It'll be intriguing how people react, I think, to the next 3 episodes that are coming out on Thursday. Of course, we know that Aubameyang controversy is getting covered across that. So yeah, that's going to be intriguing. But I've been a bit disappointed with some of the aspects. I thought they might go into more tactical detail and stuff. They haven't. They rushed, I think, the start of the season a bit as well, which was disappointing. But I think the next 3 will definitely be exciting.
Could it be? I mean, I don't want to reveal too much tactically to their opposition in a sense, but I'll tell you what, I have to say this. I was impressed with Arteta more after watching All or Nothing.
But
I know they're only showing the great
it's
bits.
the whole point of it. It's the
I know.
whole point of it. So, you know that's going to be the case. This is the big propaganda exercise.
Yeah.
Arsenal weren't the front runners in welcoming Amazon to go and do this. They've obviously seen how they'll cover Man City, how they'll cover Tottenham. And I think that's Arsenal to a T, actually. We're not... in the past, we've been like leaders, like the first team to ever have like, I think, white sleeves, like different color sleeves and... first team to have numbers on the back, first team
floodlights.
There've been loads of firsts, but I think Arsenal in their modern day era aren't necessarily the Mavericks, and I think we've done that because we've seen that actually the way teams come across, it makes people like them a little bit more, or their own fans. They put the team in a good light and the manager in a good light. So.
Do you think that helped to galvanise the feeling before the season started with the fans and the team? Do you think they watched that and maybe it did have an effect in humanising the players and endearing some of these players more to the fans after watching it?
Interesting point, actually, because you look at the timing of the release.
Because the timing of it is just before the season starts, right? And then there's this the feeling, let's be honest, that the fans away at Palace are always brilliant away fans anyway, but they did seem to be like this connection between the fans and the players.
Yeah. I mean, I would have thought they're not just going to randomly release it and not give it any thought. I'm sure some thought went into that.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go. See? I can come up with some clever ideas as well, Mo. Well, obviously not as intelligent as you, and I have to copy you with your predictions, but it is what it is.
Very insightful point there, Lev. You just got no football knowledge. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. I don't know anything about football. But listen, I'm top of the table with you at the moment, so if it works, it works. But look, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. Let's hope it continues this weekend. Obviously, we know where you can find Tom at Gooner Talk TV. You got anything you want to sort of shout out that's coming up, Tom?
Yeah, in just under an hour's time at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a tactical breakdown show on Yeremy Pino. So if you want to find out anything more about him, there's expert insight from La Liga Weekly's John Driscoll, who's a commentator on La Liga football. And there's comparisons to Moussa Diaby and Cody Gakpo. So yeah, if you want to learn some more, tune in at 8 o'clock.
Excellent. And Mo, anything you got coming up you wanted to sort of let the guys know in the chat?
No, it will just be my usual match reaction and 5 at 5 the next day. And if you are one of my new subscribers, because videos are on fire so far this year and loads of new subscribers, really good numbers. So thank you very much. I'm one of those people, I don't regard myself as like a proper YouTuber. Yeah. So I'm always like, has everyone forgotten about me? Because I didn't do anything over summer. And the fact that people have watched all the friendly content and like really good uptake again, it kind of gives me that confidence again to be like, yeah, no, people are still with me. They've got my back. So I appreciate each and every one of you.
Just a heads up, they've announced Torreira. Go on, sorry, Lev. I know
Torreira's gone. There you go, live on the Arsenal Lounge. You hear the news first. I'm also hearing there might be some dealings with a pay-per-view event with Mo versus Phil the Steward. So keep an eye out for that. It could be brutal this second time around. So keep an eye out for Mo's videos this weekend.
Well, we've seen how good Phil's nudges, so I don't know if Mo's nudge is as good.
Mo's footwork was pretty good. He didn't go down. That's the main thing. So keep an eye out for that. Xhaka. Yeah. If it was Xhaka, he would have been on the ground. But look, guys, thank you for everyone in the chat that's been here today. It's been brilliant. I hope we've covered everything as best as possible. Keeping your notifications on. I'm going to be looking to see if I can do anything over the week. I'm only on my own at the moment, so I'll do as much as I can. Hopefully, when Shaheen comes back, there'll be more shows coming. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please put a like, and also your predictions. Put your predictions in the comments. Let us know your thoughts for this weekend, and we will see you next Monday if you don't see me before that. So this has been the Arsenal Lounge. That's Mo, that's Tom. Peace out. We're out of here.